Minasan, konnichiwa. I'll let you put on your headsets now. So my name is Mike Marcellin. It is wonderful to be back in Japan, and it is a pleasure to be speaking with you today. What I'd like to cover with you today is a little bit of an overview of Juniper's strategy, and I will put it in the context of some big market changes that our industry is going through. Hopefully with the discussion of AI, we'll talk about that, but also talk about some of the other areas where Juniper is innovating. Juniper's overall strategy is really informed by this massive industry shift to the cloud. And the cloud has brought many wonderful benefits to all consumers and to businesses. However, it's also brought complexity and challenges. And so Juniper's strategy is to change networking, change how users experience networking, how our customers operate their networks in this cloud era. Now, most of you know Juniper, and you know that we serve a variety of different kinds of customers. We serve some of the largest cloud providers on the planet. Think about companies like AWS and Google and Alibaba. We also serve, and since our very beginning, have served service providers, telecom operators like NTT, Docomo, etc. And then finally, we serve enterprise customers, from the very large to smaller enterprises. And in fact, the enterprise segment is Juniper's fastest growing market segment. And all of these different types of customers are experiencing transformation and change and opportunity because of the cloud. So I want to take you through the 4 pillars of our strategy to address these customers and to focus and capitalize on these opportunities. The first part of our strategy is very simple. It's to help all of these companies build public and private cloud data centers. The data center is the heart of the cloud, and increasingly now it has become the heart of the IT organization, and in fact, maybe even of most companies and how they run their business. And so Juniper provides not just the hardware, but also a software layer to operate, manage, orchestrate, and secure public and private clouds. The next part of our strategy is to connect users and devices to the cloud and to each other. This has been Juniper's heritage from the very beginning, connecting users to each other through the network. With the advent of IoT coming, there are going to be many more devices now connecting to the network as well. So our focus here is somewhat similar to what it has been, but it's also evolving to reflect IoT and increasing demand on the network. And so in these first 2 pillars, we have a number of different innovations that we have brought to the market, and I'm going to share a few of them with you now. The first one we're calling Junos Evolved. Hopefully most of you know Junos. Junos is the network operating system that runs on Juniper's devices. In fact, it still is one of the reasons why most of our customers tell us they love Juniper. And so we want to make sure that we keep that advantage. We want to make sure we continue the great operational experience that customers have when they leverage Junos. But we also recognize that the needs of a network operating system have to evolve, have to change, have to grow when people move to the cloud, when people are thinking about automation, when people are thinking about AI. So think about Junos Evolved as an advanced version of Junos optimized for the cloud with all the same user experience that you've come to love about Junos. So that's innovation number 1. Innovation number 2, and it's actually a group of innovations that I'll share a little bit more detail with you on, is all around 400 gig and the move to higher speed, higher capacity networks. In some ways it's hard to believe that we're talking about 400 gig. It seems like just a few years ago we were talking about 100 gig and wondering how we were going to utilize all of that capacity. But as we always see happen, as we roll out more capabilities, we all as consumers and as businesses take advantage of those capabilities, think of new applications, innovate more on the network. And so 400 gig is coming fast, and Juniper intends to lead that transition. Related to that is some innovations around optics. There's a company that Juniper purchased about 4 years ago called Orion. And Orion was doing some really advanced investment on something called silicon photonics. And so this is really trying to change the cost and the economic equation of optics, which have become much more expensive and in fact become more of what cloud builders end up paying for versus the electronics, versus the hardware systems. And so we believe there's really room for innovation around optics. And so we haven't rolled out anything yet there, but stay tuned because we're working very hard with some really advanced technologies. And so look for something the first half of next year. We'll start talking more about how we can change the economics of optics as you're building high-scale networks and data centers. And then finally, Contrail Enterprise Multi-Cloud. We recognize that this move to the cloud has actually been a move to multi-cloud. That means most companies are using multiple clouds. They might have some workloads in AWS. They might have some in Azure, Google, Alibaba, Baidu. They may have some software as a service from a variety of different providers. And they may have their own private cloud. So they have workloads sitting in multiple places. And that brings a lot of complexity. And so Contrail Enterprise Multi-Cloud attempts to abstract that complexity, provide a simpler solution to running a multi-cloud environment. So these are all big areas of focus for Juniper as we think about the next step of evolution in the cloud era. Let me go on to the third pillar of the strategy. While the cloud started happening, what we saw is that there were very large data centers that got built as the cloud scaled. But what we have seen over the past year or two, and 5G is only going to make this accelerate, is that certain applications require compute to be closer to the end user. Requires it for lower latency, performance requirements. Think about augmented reality, virtual reality, connected car, IoT and certain healthcare use cases. The compute and the resources need to be closer to the user so we can no longer build one big data center that everyone connects to from all over the place. We have to build smaller clouds out closer to the user. And so that's what we mean when we say build and manage distributed clouds. And when you do that, you can take a lot of lessons from building the larger clouds, but it also requires a different way to manage and orchestrate that, because if you have 100 small clouds, it's harder to manage than one single large one. So this is the third pillar of the strategy to help our customers do this. And then finally, and maybe most exciting, is in the enterprise. As I mentioned, that's Juniper's fastest growing customer segment. And we really see that what we started with software-defined networking is now expanding out to all parts of the enterprise network. And we really have the opportunity to transform how enterprises run their networks. And I'll talk a little bit more about that around automation and even AI in the enterprise network. So in these two areas, we also have a set of innovations. Some of the most recent include Contrail Cloud. So that is our solution for a distributed cloud that we see many of our telco customers taking advantage of. And I'll talk in a moment about that. We have cloud-delivered secure SD-WAN capabilities. I think we're all familiar with the benefits of SD-WAN. We have a premises-based offering and a cloud-based offering. We have security embedded native within our SD-WAN solution. And we're seeing great interest and growth in the enterprise sector around SD-WAN. And then finally, Mist, a company that we acquired about 6 months ago. Yes, they're a Wi-Fi company, but really what they are is an AI company, an operational simplicity company, and they're really a disruptive and innovative company. I'll talk a little bit more about that, and you'll have an opportunity to learn much more about that outside at the booths and in some of the breakouts later today. So this is our strategy. It's pretty comprehensive because we have so many customers that we serve, and the market's changing fast. And so Juniper's commitment to all of you is that we will continue to innovate rapidly. We will continue to lead in many areas and create markets that we can all go after and benefit from together. So strategy is great, but at the end of the day, you have to translate the strategy to solutions that we can all take advantage of. And Juniper is really focused on delivering game-changing solutions. And so I'm going to talk through those in 5 key transitional areas. 400 gig, which I mentioned. 5G, which is coming fast, hopefully fast enough for the Tokyo Olympics. Multi-cloud, AI, and of course, security. Let's first talk about 400 gig. As I mentioned, 400 gig will start to roll out very soon. In fact, Juniper has already shipped the industry's first 400 gig platforms, and we expect wide-scale deployments to start happening probably next year. These will happen mostly initially in the large cloud providers and in some service providers. But make no mistake, over time, this will impact research and education networks and eventually enterprise networks as well. And 400 gig is not just about new hardware. It's also about Junos running across all of those platforms, providing operational simplicity. It's about embedded security, and I'll talk in a moment about some really innovative things we've done with security with our 400 gig deployment. And it's about automation. If you think about what 400 gig is going to bring, it's going to bring a lot more capacity, a lot more traffic, many more applications, and a distributed network that will need to be automated in order to run it effectively. And so we at Juniper intend to lead the 400 gig transformation across IP transport, WAN services, and within the data center. And the underpinning of our 400 gig portfolio is silicon. And those of you that know Juniper well, which most of you do, know that silicon has been a part of our innovation for many, many years. But I have to say, we are not religious about building our own silicon. Honestly, if there were merchant silicon that could meet the needs of our customers, we will happily purchase that. And in fact, in some parts of our portfolio, that's exactly what we do. But where we see the need for innovation and the opportunity to advance the industry beyond what merchant silicon can provide, that's where we invest in our own silicon. And the 400 gig transition is exactly one of those moments. And so we're investing in silicon across our PTX, QFX, and MX product portfolio. The Triton silicon powers the PTX and QFX, and it's already shipping. And the Penta silicon powers the MX, and you'll start to see those 400 gig platforms roll out next year. Both of these silicon families and the products that they will enable are highly power efficient. They are extremely high performance, which you have to be when you're running at 400 gig. I mentioned security a moment ago. We've actually embedded native MACsec, just a security protocol, within the chip. Why is that important? Because most other vendors will put it on a separate chip or maybe even require a separate device. And so this, again, lowers the cost and increases the performance and lowers the power consumption because you have fewer chips to manage. And so 400 gig is a huge opportunity for us. As I mentioned, we've already started shipping some of the platforms this year, focused right now on the network core with both scale-up chassis and smaller scale-out fixed form factor systems, as well as within the data center with our QFX as a data center spine at 400 gig. So it's exciting for us to bring this new wave of innovation to the market. So that's our opportunity with 400 gig. Now let's talk about 5G. This is something that we're all well aware of, and it's coming pretty fast. There are a few things about 5G that I'd like to share with you. As many of you know, 5G is a native IP technology, just like LTE was IP as well. And so that's important to Juniper because of our strength in IP, and that means we can bring innovations more easily to 5G deployments. And we do that across all parts of the network infrastructure. We don't build radio access technology, but the 5G deployments will impact the entirety of the network. I want to talk for a moment about the innovations that we've done to get ready for 5G. The first one is, one of the biggest capabilities that 5G will bring that the customers I speak with are extremely excited about is network slicing. The ability to take a network, essentially isolate a slice of that network, a virtual slice of that network, and run certain set of applications with certain performance characteristics, certain SLAs on that network slice. And you can do many, many network slices. So that's going to give mobile operators much more ability to roll out new services and ensure the required performance of those services. Well, in preparation for that, Juniper has actually invested in a functionality called node slicing, which means we take the actual network element and we can do something very similar. You can use different parts of that network element, that router, for different applications with different performance characteristics. So it's the first step to being able to do an end-to-end network slice. The next area is around something called control and user plane separation, or CUPS. And this is basically giving the mobile operator the ability to, again, isolate the different functionality that they need to run the network, the data, the users, and the control or management of that network, and do those independently but in a coordinated way. And Juniper's MX portfolio has the first 3GPP standards-based compliant 5G CUPS implementation. So our customers have already started deploying that, and they are now ready for 5G when it comes. Another important area with 5G, of course, because it's always important, is security. Now, I don't think 5G will be fundamentally different in security and how we think about security than 4G. But what we know about 5G is it will allow much higher capacity, so much more traffic on the network. Many more new applications will emerge because of the low latency of 5G, and many more devices will be connected to the network. So the approach may be the same, but the requirements on the security infrastructure are much more significant and profound. And so Juniper has been spending time investing in our security portfolio, specifically our high-end SRX, to make sure that that infrastructure is ready for the significant growth in user sessions, in overall traffic throughput, and for new architectures like CUPS and mobile edge compute. And then finally, beyond the infrastructure, it's about managing and orchestrating in a cloud-like environment as we think about 5G. And so I mentioned the distributed edge cloud approach that we have in our strategy. And so that comes out in solutions like Contrail Edge Cloud to power some of our service providers to put in telco clouds to enable their operations to be more efficient and to enable new service generation more quickly. So let me click down on that a little bit. We have been working for over a year now with one of our great partners, Red Hat. And the goal was to do something we call Contrail Cloud, which is a pre-validated, pre-designed edge cloud solution. And so from the network capabilities and the orchestration that Juniper brings to the compute and storage stack that Red Hat brings, we're now able to provide a best-of-breed, world-class solution for the implementation of edge cloud and telco cloud. And we have some customers that are already adopting it, British Telecom, as you see on the slide, and we believe this is the next big thing for service providers to transform how they build and operate their networks. And so we are convening some of the top service providers around the world and really thinking about how we approach standardization of telco cloud and the benefits that it will bring, and even having them talk to each other about some of the implementation challenges so we can get through those together. So telco cloud will be a big area to watch as we watch 5G get deployed. And lastly, regarding 5G, as I mentioned, Juniper doesn't build radio access networks. And so in order to have an end-to-end solution, we need to partner. And we have, I would say, the best radio access partner in the world, which is Ericsson. And as I mentioned, Juniper brings all of the kind of networking from the metro to the edge and the core. And what Ericsson brings is the radio access network. They also bring the ability to do front haul, mid haul, and back haul solutions. And then they bring a world-class network management capability that Juniper has plugged into. So now truly, our customers can get an end-to-end solution. Ericsson can bring that solution, do the systems integration, and provide a complete solution as someone's thinking about what they need for 5G. Okay, let's move on to multi-cloud. As I mentioned, most of our customers are in some form of multi-cloud. They maybe didn't do it intentionally, but when their developers wanted to put workloads, they chose AWS. When their China operations wanted to move data and workloads into the cloud, they chose Alibaba. When they were doing AI experimentation, they chose Google because they're good at that. So they've chosen all of these things because they're the best cloud for the specific application. But what ended up happening is complexity. This slide is quite complex because the world that our customers are living in is quite complex. They have virtualized a lot of their workloads and put them in one of these clouds. But they may be running applications on bare metal servers, maybe because they're legacy applications that don't make sense to or you can't virtualize, or maybe because of some of the performance or I/O requirements of those applications. Most of our customers are thinking about containers and how they deploy containers over the next few years. And so whether it's virtual or container or bare metal, whether it's AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, whether they're using Nutanix or VMware in their private cloud environment, we can support it all, and the way that we do that is with Contrail Enterprise Multi-Cloud. It gives you a single command console. It allows you to basically do intent-driven policy and deploy that across all of your network infrastructure, both the SDN overlay and also the hardware infrastructure, the underlay network. And so what Contrail Enterprise Multi-Cloud is our attempt to abstract the complexity that our customers face and give them a simplified offering to run their multi-cloud environment. And you can learn more about Contrail Enterprise Multi-Cloud outside at one of the booths. Okay, I know you were waiting for me to get to AI because we've been spending a lot of time talking about AI. So let me tell you a little bit about what Juniper's doing around AI. But the first thing I would say is that AI is not the goal. AI is a tool. And we believe AI is a very valuable tool to help our customers on their journey to the self-driving network. You heard earlier, and maybe you've heard from Juniper over the last few years, that our vision for the network is a self-driving network. And so AI gives us another tool, as does automation, scripting, analytics, visibility. All of those things, data, a lot of data, will help us move toward a self-driving, more autonomous network. And we see this as an opportunity across our entire portfolio, and I'll take you through that in a bit. But when we talk about a self-driving network, what do we mean? We all know what a self-driving car is. It's a big piece of hardware that's increasingly becoming dependent on software. Software to operate the hardware, the car, but also software to help the driver be a better driver, to help respond to dangerous situations. And so in a network context, it's a network that's self-correcting, that's self-optimizing, self-monitoring, self-correcting. And so there's no reason why, if we can make a car moving 120 kilometers an hour down the road relatively autonomous, that we can't do that with a network as well. And so that's our vision. And we're actually implementing AI and machine learning in a number of parts of our portfolio. A few are listed here. SkyATP, our advanced threat protection solution. The security industry has been using machine learning algorithms for probably over a decade. And in the case of SkyATP, the goal there is it's an advanced threat protection solution, so that means you're trying to isolate threats that are currently unknown. It's not a known threat that's in some kind of a list that sits on your firewall. It's an unknown threat that the network hasn't seen before. But we may be able to use patterns and data from what we've seen in the past to be able to assess that as a potential threat, to be able to quarantine that threat somewhere, and to be able to make sure that the network doesn't get impacted by it. So machine learning has to be used because trying to predict that something is malicious is something that's very challenging for a person to do. And one of the things about AI is essentially it allows you to predict the future. It allows you to take what you've seen, patterns, data, and then predict what might be. And that's what SkyETP does with security or advanced threats. AppFormix does something similar for basically the application stack. So how is an application performing? What is my SLA, and is the application meeting that? And AppFormix looks across the entire stack, not just the network, but also compute and storage. It allows you to set SLAs, understand based on past performance what might be happening in the network, and detect where there may be an issue much more quickly using machine learning. And then finally, HealthBot, which if you know if you have a Fitbit, that monitors your own personal health, well, HealthBot is a Fitbit for the network. Again, very similar. It takes in a lot of data from what the network is doing, and it's able to predict where there might be a concern coming. A performance concern, an outage, misconfiguration that may impact the network. And so all of these areas are using machine learning and AI to do their work. But maybe the most exciting part of our portfolio that's using AI is Mist. Now, we all use Wi-Fi, and the people that run Wi-Fi networks know that the biggest question that they get from their users is, the Wi-Fi's down, or why is the Wi-Fi not working? And historically, that was a very challenging question for IT to answer, because IT had visibility into the Wi-Fi access point, and if someone said, my Wi-Fi is not connecting, they could look and see if the access point was up and operational, but they couldn't necessarily isolate that particular user's experience. And so that is the big change with Mist. The two gentlemen that founded Mist about 4 years ago had long careers in the Wi-Fi industry at companies like Cisco, Meraki, and even companies before that. And they built very good Wi-Fi solutions, but they were never able to isolate down to the user level because in order to do that, it required bringing a lot of data, massive volumes of data from those end devices. And that was just challenging to do in a cloud environment, and just the amount of compute and storage you needed to do that was significant. But Mist has solved that problem for Wi-Fi. And so what Mist can do is, of course, it can tell you if the access point is up, but it also knows every single user who's connected to that access point, and it can isolate based on their phone, their tablet, their PC, or whatever they have that's connected to the network, based on a lot of data that they're consuming, where there is an issue. Now, the other innovation that Mist has done is, because it's getting all of this data, it realized that we can harness that data, use that data with AI to better predict the future, to better understand not just what the user experience is now, but to understand maybe where there's going to be an issue in the future, and to take some of the burden off of IT in handling all of those user questions or concerns. And the Mist AI engine is called Marvis. Now, this is some data from Marvis from the beginning of this year till now. And I'll explain the slide to you. Basically, the easy way to understand it is that red and orange is bad, meaning the data that you need to solve a problem is trapped in the access point or maybe in the cloud console. But Marvis, the AI agent, can't access it at this time. So Marvis, the AI agent, cannot solve the problem. It will take a person to go in, pull the data down from the access point and solve the problem. Blue and green is good, meaning Marvis actually has that data, has access to that data, can process that data, and can solve the problem. Well, if you notice, as the year has progressed, the blue and the green has gone up. Marvis has gotten smarter. Marvis is learning. And so now recently, what you'll see is well over 50% of issues with the network or with user experience, Marvis has the answer in the data to take an action. That's massive progress in a relatively short amount of time. So put another way, if Marvis can address the issue, so the customer goes into Marvis and says, Tomo-san's iPhone is not working right. And Marvis will analyze the data and come back and tell you exactly, it'll confirm that, and then it'll tell you exactly what to do about it. And if it can do that 50% of the time, that means that 50% of the inquiries won't have to go to vendor technical support. You won't have to spend all that time explaining what the issue is. And the trend line is moving in the right direction. It's a very positive direction. And so in addition to Mist, the other big area of innovation around this software-defined enterprise is around our cloud SD-WAN solution. And actually, it's probably not even fair to call it just an SD-WAN solution, because we see it more as an SD branch, a software-defined branch solution. What do I mean by that? It means that in a single solution, managed from the cloud, you can run your SD-WAN, control your policies, your application steering, all of that. You can also do the same around SD-LAN for your local access network, your local area network. You can do the same for Wi-Fi, and you can do the same for security. So it's the entirety of the branch in a single solution. And it provides zero-touch provisioning to deploy, and then also, again, proactive monitoring throughout the entire operations of the solution. So between Mist and our SD-WAN solution, we're extremely excited about our opportunity and the solutions we're bringing to the enterprise market. Now, one other thing about Mist is, while Mist was founded as a Wi-Fi company, as I said earlier, it's actually an AI and simplified operations company. So they started with Wi-Fi, and even today with Mist, you can see some basic statistics and you can get visibility on the wired or the switching network. And by the way, that works with any vendor. It's not just a Juniper switch. But what we're doing now, what you'll see coming out over the coming months, is the ability to really dive into Juniper switches, our EX portfolio, and really understand what's going on, understand software versions, performance characteristics, health metrics of the hardware itself. And so you'll be able to provide basic service levels around wired switching, and then eventually what we call wired assurance. Today we have wireless assurance, the assurance that your wireless is going to perform at a certain level. We'll be able to do the same for the wired network. So a complete solution using AI, using a single dashboard, and it's powered by Mist. So why does any of that matter? It matters because, again, if you can take all of the user complaints and requests off of the IT staff, that frees them up to do other things of value. We have one customer that told us that before they used Mist, they were getting about 100 trouble tickets a month from users saying, the Wi-Fi is not working, I can't connect, my connection is slow. 100 a month. Once they implemented Mist and Marvis, now they get 2 per month. 98% decrease in user troubles regarding wireless. That means that IT staff, who would probably rather not be answering questions about the Wi-Fi, can now focus on how do they use containers? How do they, what workload should they put in the public cloud? How do they move their business forward rather than dealing with user complaints about the Wi-Fi? And from the company's perspective, it also means, for at least 50% of the cases today, you don't have to call into, technical support and explain your problem, and then have technical support try to understand and diagnose the problem. And then if they see that it's a problem, then they pass it to level 2 support for a deeper dive. All of that takes time, it takes resources, and it's, again, not what IT would like to be spending their time doing. So we're really excited about the opportunity that Mist and AI are going to bring to the entire portfolio of Juniper over time. Okay, last section is about security. And one thing you'll notice is that in all of the sections I've talked about thus far, I've mentioned security. And that's because our view of security is that it must be embedded a part of every single one of our solutions. And that's something we call connected security. So yes, we make a great firewall. We have a set of security solutions. But we also have the ability to use the entire network, every network element, for detection of threats and for the mitigation of threats. So our connected security is about helping you better see what's going on in your network for dynamic detection. Threats are changing every day. We're getting more of them every day, so you need to have that visibility. It's about automation, helping you, once you see that threat, helping you enforce the right policy against that threat, and certainly remediate any kind of issue that you've found. And ultimately, it's about protecting, streamlining how you operate your security infrastructure so that your business can move forward and you're not worried about cyber threats. Now let me give you an example of how we do connected security. A few months ago, we announced the capability of our MX router to basically connect with our security policy enforcer and basically run a set of firewall rules within the MX router. MX router is obviously very high performance. You get line rate protection over that router, firewall filters and capabilities, not to replace a firewall, but to be another point of detection and enforcement in the network. So why is it important that the entire network be used for detection and enforcement? Why don't we just continue to use firewalls and other security appliances? Well, think about what's going to happen with IoT. We're going to have billions of devices, sensors connected to the network. Many of those devices and sensors are very small, have limited or no compute on them, which means they can't run security software on the device or on the sensor. And if they can't run security software, they are vulnerable. They are a vulnerability for your network. Those devices and sensors typically will connect to an IoT gateway or to a switch, almost never to a firewall directly. And so if your switch or your IoT gateway is not secure, then that vulnerability and that threat will come in and propagate, spread throughout the network before your firewall can catch it. And in fact, many of the largest data breaches we've seen over the last 5 years have come of corporate networks have come through connected devices, connected lighting, connected heating systems. So IoT is great, but also it creates more points of vulnerability. So that's why using the entire network for detection and enforcement is important, can save money and also can certainly improve your risk profile. So across all of these innovations, as we can see, our world is not becoming simpler, it's becoming more complex. And that's the reality. And so Juniper's commitment to our customers, to our partners, is to try to take as much of that complexity off of you and to put it on ourselves and have our solutions engineer simplicity for our customers. ありがとうございます。